Well, thank you for tuning in to our regional interviews. We're trying to make sure we're getting different interviews from across the state to show the need, to advocate, to end homelessness, to make sure we have the resources needed. Our guest during this interview is Lucy Zanders, who's the executive director of Theresa Living Center in Ramsey County. They're a service provider for individuals and families that are exiting out of homelessness. Lucy is amazing. I also got to say, she's a board member of the Coalition for the Homeless recently, and we're just thrilled to have her as a leadership role at MCH as well. So I'm just going to dive right in, Lucy, and I'm going to ask you our first question.
Okay.
Statewide, we know we need more shelter beds, but some people wonder, like, well, what about each region? So I'd like to ask you, for Ramsey County, do we need more shelter beds, and why, if so?
Most definitely, Matt, in Ramsey County, we do. I think for Ramsey County, there has always been a discussion as to whether or not they want to put dollars into shelter space as opposed to prevention or other permanent living type of programs. And I think the only caveat to the whole thing is that we are seeing such an increase in homelessness that we have to have a place or a stage in order to transition people as they wait for housing. The shelter bed space is an issue in Ramsey County for singles as well as for families. And it just so happens that I serve or service both ends. I service single women as well as single parent heads of households. And I think we see a large number of singles in the homeless system that need shelter, but also we see a large number of families that are in the homeless system that need shelter space too. So oftentimes we're at a crossroad where we're trying to figure where do we need it most. And it's definitely needed in both areas in terms of shelter space.
Right. And you started to talk on, we need something for when, people are starting to wait and are ready to get their own housing, but they still need services.
Right.
They need resources. Can you expand on that? Like, besides just shelter beds, what else do you think we need for services and resources?
I think we need a lot of the other type of wraparound services for people as they are even trying to transition and shelter. Many times what I find is that I may have singles or families who they could be in the shelter system, or they could be what we call couch hopping, or even sleeping in uninhabitable places, but they have some barrier that they have that even before they're referred to me, that we need to address. So oftentimes I get singles or families that come into that are referred to my program, and they have a lot of barriers that I right away have to start trying to tear down and break through before I can even get them to be housing ready, I guess you could say. So, even in the shelter system, we can ask for more shelter beds, but we also need more services as they're in the waiting room, I guess you could say, even for referral into a housing program. And a good spot for that would be in a shelter type setting where you're getting individuals housing ready and not really thinking of shelter just as, we kind of think of shelter as usual. It needs to be shelter with some other kind of services as well.
Nice. Thank you. Well said. Well said. And I know you're on lots of different leadership roles. We already said it, are on our board and all that, but so it kind of tapping into that wisdom and, knowledge that you have, is there something that you'd like to make sure Minnesotans understand? Like, we need to look downstream. We need this advocacy, or upstream, I should say. We need longer term solutions. Is there something that you'd want to make sure advocates hear and prioritize?
Yeah, well, if I start looking at my work, and I do a lot of work with families trying to transition them, and I look at sometimes how they come into the program and how we're expecting them to leave the program as well. There's so much going on in between, and so many things that I think need to be even considered. Like I may have individuals as well as families that I know come into the program, and without the program, they will never be able to afford housing on their own. I don't care if it's a single a woman or whether it's a single parent head of household, and sometimes dual parent head of households. Housing is so unaffordable right now that it is really totally out of reach. And I'm then in a program where I say, okay, I am going to try to do 2 years of trying to fix your issues. And 2 years will not fix the issue of them not being able to afford housing unless we look at affordable housing. You know, um, kind of looking upstream, I guess you could say. We definitely have to have a larger market of affordable housing for people. And you could be of the mindset where, okay, I'm going to try to make it so that I'm going to try to increase their income so that they can afford more while they're in the program. But increasing income also, you don't have people making affordable wages. So it becomes where everything is going to have a trickle down effect upstream, because you have all these barriers, and you have also people that are trying to exit out of homelessness, only to really kind of have it in your mind that unless we do fix some of these outside impactors, that they're going to exit from a program right back into homelessness and start the cycle again.
Right. Well, yeah, thanks for highlighting the holistic need if we really want to end homelessness. And I hope if you're watching these regional interviews, hopefully, something that Lucy said, or maybe one of the other interviews really sparked something. But yeah, keep in mind, our advocacy is so important. Thank you, Lucy, for your advocacy and your role that you have in your community and across the state. So again, thank you for letting us interview you.
Yeah, thanks, Matt.
Thanks.
Mhm.